Hi everybody, welcome back to another edition of Tubes on Tuesday. Well, as we know, buying a property is probably the single most expensive transaction that we could ever undertake. So it's critically important that we get the legal part of this transaction down pat. This week I had Kerry Harth from Crilly Law in our boardroom to talk about the role of the solicitor.
It's to make sure that from a purchaser's point of view in particular, that the promises that the seller has put into the contract are checked. So we check the property records, make sure that the actual title can be transferred across satisfactorily, adjustments are made, and that the purchaser's interests are protected.
Kerry, very few people probably would have actually attended a settlement, even those who bought many properties. What actually happens at a settlement?
It's basically that both parties' banks will turn up. From the seller's side, they will have a release of any securities such as mortgages on the property. From the buyer's side, the bank will turn up essentially with the money. From the seller's solicitor's side, they will come along to make sure that the seller receives the funds that they are supposed to receive at settlement. From the purchaser's side, we'll make sure that the correct title is transferred across. We may also deal with some of the purchase monies, so if the bank is providing 60%, the client's putting in the balance 40%, that will have to come into our trust account and we'll have to then provide those balance funds at settlement.
Is the legal process for buying property the same in every state?
The settlement process itself is similar, however the actual contractual formation, if you like, so how the contract actually comes together and how the parties are legally bound by the contract are different from state to state. Queensland is perhaps different to a lot of the other states in that you have your contract which is signed by both parties at the same time and they're bound straight away. In New South Wales, Victoria, in those states it's very much based on old English procedure and that you will have a formal exchange of contracts. So one party will sign a contract, the other party will sign a contract. The purchaser then has a certain period of days, it's normally about 30 days, to investigate and look at all of those disclosure documents, and if they're happy, they then do a formal exchange of contracts.
And what qualifications do conveyancers or solicitors require?
In Victoria, New South Wales, South Australia, they have licensed conveyancers who are separately qualified from solicitors. WA, they have a settlement agent, again similar to a licensed conveyancer, and again different to a solicitor. In Queensland, we don't have conveyancers as such. You have people who call themselves conveyancing clerks, and I've been one before I became a solicitor, or a conveyancing paralegal, but they must work within a legal firm.
So a property investor who is looking to buy multiple properties in multiple states,
Yes.
it's highly likely that they would unfortunately need to use different solicitors in different states.
Yes.
And what are some of the areas that solicitors are not qualified to give advice in?
Specifically any financial or taxation advice. We can't give valuation advice. We can't advise pest and building results. That's something for them to talk to the inspector about. Boundary issues, so if they're concerned about the location of the boundaries, they have to get a surveyor to actually do their surveying. And the suitability of the property for their purposes, and we can't give them advice on that. One of the most common is pest and building issues. Finance in some circumstances, where the property doesn't stack up to valuation. It's the final inspection that is allowed to the buyer prior to actual settlement proceeding. It's usually done either the day before or the day of settlement, quite often. It's to check that the property hasn't been damaged in any way. It's to check that the seller hasn't taken any of the items from the property that they should be leaving behind, such as dishwashers, curtains, chandeliers, those types of items in a house. Gazumping is where you've put an offer in to purchase the property, so you may have signed the contract, put the offer to the seller, The seller hasn't yet signed the contract. They have another offer which comes in on better terms, and the seller accepts that offer without giving you the opportunity first of perhaps increasing the offer or changing the terms.
As we build our property investment portfolio, to take advantage of the best investment opportunities, invariably we'll end up investing in different states. As Kerry highlighted, the contract process and legislation does vary from state to state. Whilst conveyancing may not be the most exciting part of a property purchase, it certainly is one of the most important. I can't emphasise enough the importance of getting really good legal representative in your corner as opposed to the sausage factory variety. Hope you've enjoyed this edition of Tubes on Tuesday.